Trust in government is at an all-time low. And now we have the perfect piece of evidence to support the idea that governments are, in fact, completely untrustworthy. What am I referring to? I am referring, of course, to the hypocritical lockdown. Why do I call it hypocritical? Because for weeks, if not months, we were told that it was absolutely essential to engage in this lockdown. It was essential to close certain businesses. It was essential to keep social distance. It was essential to do all of these things. Wear masks. But all of a sudden, it's not essential. Why is it no longer essential? Because racism and the history of alleged white supremacy is more important than an alleged health crisis, we're told. If you haven't been paying attention, in the United States and elsewhere, health professionals, doctors and scientists have said that whatever the risks of the alleged pandemic, they're not as important to pay attention to as the legacy of supposed white supremacy. Now, many of you might be familiar with the term clown world. This is beyond clown world. This is insane. Meanwhile, law-abiding citizens are still forced to wear masks and still requested to participate in social distancing. But if you're protesting or rioting or destroying property, you don't have to do that because that's a worthy cause. Now, there are different ways of interpreting this, obviously. One could see this as pure malice on the part of governments. And by governments, I mean really the entire West, because the governments in Europe are silent on this matter too. In Germany, there were tens of thousands of people, primarily concentrated in Berlin, protesting for Black Lives Matter. Cheek on jowl, neck on neck, no social distancing, hardly a mask to be seen. Now, I point this out to also add to that fact that only a few weeks prior in Berlin, there were people demonstrating, which they were not allowed to do, allegedly, against the restrictions and lockdown, and they were hauled off. To jail, I do not know. But the demonstrations and protests were certainly disrupted, and they were disintegrated to nothingness. So is it malice? Is it incompetence? Is it cowardice? I think it is a little bit of all three. There certainly is a degree of complicity on the part of all governments these days with the political lunacy that has arrived in the past decade. Things have built up, but the fact that the governments just sat by and countenanced it tells me that they're not necessarily good actors. But I do think of these three components, malice is the smallest one by far. There's a whole lot of incompetence going on. That's always the case with government and human beings in general. But I think what we're really seeing on display here is cowardice. After all, if it was perfectly okay to break up demonstrations and rallies and protests against the lockdown and haul these people off if need be, why is it not okay to do it now? After all, functionally, fundamentally, at least according to the alleged experts, nothing has changed about the situation with the pandemic. Well, apparently it has changed. Because nobody in any government, whether it's in France, the Netherlands, Germany, Canada, and above all in the United States, wants to receive the ominous title and label of being called a racist. If governments were to intervene, for the sake of the line that they were maintaining for the longest period of time earlier this year, and break up these protests and riots, well, then they could be called racist. And that is more important than what is alleged to be a public health crisis. It's astonishing that they're not thinking about the long-term consequences of this. It's already the case that the public hardly trusts the government. And it's already the case that the trust and confidence in public health authorities is pretty low. And now this. You have scientists and doctors claiming that white supremacy and racism are so important. And again, these are not demonstrable things. These are ideological claims. These things are so important that they're more important than a health crisis, alleged health crisis. Because we don't really know at this stage how serious this is. It was claimed to be serious, But was it overreaction? I'm increasingly leaning towards saying yes, it was. Almost certainly. And the fact that the governments throughout the West are too cowardly to stay consistent with the party line and swapped party lines within what could be considered a political blink of the eye tells you a whole lot. Add to that the fact that in the United States, at least, there's still ongoing riots, destruction of property, arson, protests. I'm sure many of you heard about the autonomous zone that's been established in Seattle, a joke to end all jokes, but nonetheless, it's there. And what are politicians doing? Bending the knee to this insanity. Now, I'm firmly convinced at this stage that this is essentially a kind of mind virus, and it also has religious and cultic aspects to it. I saw recently images of some people in North Carolina who happen to be white washing the feet of BLM leaders as if these were religious libations. And because everything is so insane at this stage, so off the wall, off the charts insane, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if people started to self-immolate to atone for the sins that they've allegedly committed. And because there's been no intervention, because these things are supported by everyone in the mainstream, it seems, because supposedly a pandemic is not as important as BLM and religious ideology, when does it end? At what point is it enough? I guess it's enough when these people burn themselves out, when they've looted and destroyed everything in their path. I don't know. Do you? I don't think anyone knows. Because this is the fundamental question. And this is really the issue here. The government probably knows that there is a limited degree of tolerance for looting, arson, destruction of property, mugging, theft, and murder in the populace. But they also have their hands tied behind their back because of their cowardice. They're afraid of being called racist because if they intervene, inevitably somebody is going to come to blows. There's going to be violence. Maybe some people will die. And maybe some of those deaths will be people who happen to be African American. Now, these governments are terrified of intervening because they're afraid of the very likely possibility that this is going to escalate things. However, setting aside that concern, if you constantly make concessions, all they're going to do is take. Most people just want to live their lives. However those lives might be, they just want to get on with their business, go to work, have some fun, eat, fuck, shit, sleep, you know? And some of these things going on there are preventing that. So government is, at this stage, caught between a rock and a hard place. As I mentioned before, they were either lying about the pandemic, claiming how important it was and serious it was, or they're just too cowardly to call it out now. But they also need to eventually intervene. You can't have this level of disorder across the United States, not like this. And it's persisting. And it's all based on phantasms about problems that are present to a degree, but completely exaggerated. And on top of that, a lack of examination of the facts. For example, what is the reality of police violence and misconduct? It's all running on emotion. Now, eventually, I guess they will stop when they burn themselves out. But the government won't look any better for it. If the government never intervenes, it's going to look like a spineless coward, which of course it's showing itself to be at this moment. Or if they do intervene, the claims and allegations of systematic racism will grow, obviously. All evidence to the contrary notwithstanding. Did you know, for example, in the year 2019, in the city of Los Angeles, the biggest dump hole and worst city in the United States, and by that I mean it's just a horrible place, not specifically with respect to crime, that 2019 had seen the fewest number of police shootings ever in recorded history? Ever in the recorded history of the city? You wouldn't think that, given what's happening now. The extremely annoying, hypocritical pundit called Ben Shapiro likes to say that facts don't care about your feelings. But that's not how humans operate. Humans have always operated, and still do, in accordance with the axiom of feelings don't care about your facts. So I could trot out every statistic about police violence and engagement, and it wouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter to these people. But one thing that's almost certainly going to arise from this is more tension between different groups of people in the United States than has ever been present in the last 3 decades at least. And this is, I guess, what they want. Ever towards the abyss. In any event, enjoy your weekend. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. And as always, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.